I must quickly make a video having now returned from the land of Kiefer and seeing most of my kids together all at once, except for Ryan. Appreciated being with everybody and just wanted to share something that's been in my thoughts. It's been a while since I've actually shared the word with my family. Used to be a more common thing, and I guess a lot of times you guys heard through osmosis. You heard the word you heard things that the Lord was dealing with me about, or that I was speaking about while I was at New Life, because they would invite me to speak every so often, or I'd end up speaking. But anyways, you guys know the struggles of the past year. You don't know every detail, and you don't need to. You just know that there's been this huge crash. What happened to Dad? It's this huge crash. And that's the best way I know how to describe it, is a crash. Kind of a culmination of things that from my life that were just have been really, I guess you could say sometimes it feels like more than my fair share of suffering. Some things from my parents, some things from my marriage. And I can't say anything from the kids except for when, and I've talked about Catherine with this before, it's stressful as a parent when you can see, hey, my kid's about to derail his life or her life, and there's nothing I can do about it, and they won't listen. And that's very, very stressful and upsetting. And so, I wondered why that was. I thought maybe something was abnormal with me, because I know I've worked with guys, I've worked with lots of people, I've talked with people, I've interacted with friends and family, and not everybody has a complete collapse when things in the family go wrong. And so I asked our counselor, Dr. Sharp, why is that? And he said something surprising. He said, most people don't think about things as deeply as you do, Steve. But a lot of people don't feel things as deeply as you do. In other words, a lot of people just don't care. The people who just don't care, or who are just kind of go through life without ever giving thought to anything, or without ever reflecting on things, don't really usually love as deeply. And he's like, you wouldn't be as hurt as you are right now if you hadn't actually loved all the people in your life that have hurt you, and you didn't actually care about them. And whether that's my parents or my wife or my children, that dynamic has existed where I've always kind of felt like the weights were off. My concern for the other person is way greater than their concern for me. And so all that sort of culminated. I had my big crash, my catatonic crash, and I laid in my bed like a burrito for a while, and now I'm feeling better. That's the good thing here. I'm feeling more energized. I'm starting to feel like my old self, really. So without getting into a lot of it, I've just asked the Lord, what about this? What about all that time and supply? What was that about? Because it seems like on the surface, it just seems like wasted time, and there was just tragedy. We had a good life while we were there, in terms of our situation where we lived was nice. We lived there for 8 years and had a nice situation, but the spiritual situation kind of was sucking and for a long time, and I didn't like the schools, and the just the environment around, even my job. You think about everything that happened there. So many things happened, not just the leg break, but I was sick when we moved there, and lost my job with Pepsi, disabled my way out of my job, and then the leg break, and just so much happened there that I just came out of that experience feeling like everything that I thought I knew, everything that I thought I could rely on, was stripped away. And it's in that that sense of having things stripped away that I want to share something that the Lord has spoken to me. I was in prayer a couple weeks ago, and I heard this phrase in my thoughts, and the phrase is, "The trees of the Lord are full of sap." And I said, well, for goodness sake, what's this about? I know that's in the Bible somewhere. So I went and looked it up. And it's from Psalm 104. And it says, "The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he planted." The trees of the Lord are full of sap. What the heck? What is this even in the Bible for? What does it mean? And I don't think it was anything, it's not a Troll 2 kind of theology here. Green, the color of sap. The trees of the Lord are full of sap. Sap is like the blood of the tree. And without the sap, if you cut it, the sap runs. From whence we get maple syrup and birch beer and lots of delicious things. But the sap is what carries throughout the tree the ability to grow. It's kind of like the blood of our body. And I just thought about that, the strength of the sap. And it says in John 15, this is where Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and he said this. He said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the keeper of the vineyard." So right away, he's making this analogy between himself and his life and a vineyard and the vine that grows in the vineyard. He says, "My Father's the keeper of the vineyard. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it to make it even more fruitful." And then Jesus said, "You are already clean. You're already pruned because of the word I've spoken to you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. Just as no branch can bear fruit by itself unless it remains in the vine, neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. The one who remains in me, and I in him, will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he is like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are gathered up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, proving yourselves to be my disciples." So right away, the trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he planted. It says throughout the Bible that we are the planting of the Lord. And here in John, Jesus says, "I'm the vine. I'm the thing that goes into the ground, the thing that puts roots downward and fruit upward. I'm that. And you are the branches." So you are a part of this, but your life is not your own. Your life flows from me. And apart from me, you can do nothing. Just as if you went out and cut off a piece of the vine, a branch from it, and you laid it on the ground. If you live around here, you've seen what the wind does when the trees fall after a hurricane and stuff like that. And those things just turn brown. They wither and they turn brown, and then we gather them up and throw them on the fire. And that's what Jesus is saying a life that doesn't abide in him is like. And it's not because he's mad and he's just casting us away. It's because we did not abide in him, and therefore we just dried out. It was just the natural consequence of being removed and not remaining with the source of life. And then it just dries up and it comes to nothing. And so it's a natural consequence of not being connected to the life, is that your life dries up. And it says in Psalm chapter 1, it's one of my favorite Psalms because it sort of sets off the whole book. It's very short, but it has in there that a righteous man is like a tree planted by the streams of water. And it yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And it's a man who prospers in all he does. Why does he prosper? Why does he do well? Because he's planted not in a field somewhere that's not connected to water or that depends on rain, but he is planted next to a stream of life that he can put down roots and constantly receive life, constantly receive sap. And I just dwelled on that. I just meditated on that. I was like, this is not that means it's not dependent on whether there's rain or whether there's a drought. The life of Christ, the life in God, is always available. And it's always available. How is it available? How do I receive that life? Jesus said that too. I'll take you back real quick. This is going to connect this all together. But in Leviticus, God said something very strange to his people. He said when they killed an animal to eat it or to sacrifice it, he said, do not eat the blood. He said, for the life, this is from Leviticus 17, the life, the soul of all flesh is in its blood. And so he said, my people will not eat blood. He did not want them eating blood. He wanted them to drain the blood out of the animal or the sacrifice. Sometimes they had to sprinkle it around, but the point was, you don't eat this stuff. This is the soul of the animal. This is the life. The life of all flesh is in the blood. The trees of the Lord are full of sap. And then Jesus comes along. If you think Jesus was just some kind of namby-pamby, make people feel good dude, you just listen to this, okay? So the people who were entrenched in this culture, that you don't eat the blood of an animal that you have killed or that you sacrificed, this is what he says to them. Jesus says to them in John chapter 6, truly, truly, I tell you, unless you eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of Man, you have no life in you. You are that withered branch. You have no life in you if you don't eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of Man. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. He is like a man who is planted by a stream of water. It is eternal. It runs always. It is eternal. And I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in him. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so also the one who feeds on me will live because of me. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me. Jesus said, remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Remain in me. How do we do that? It's communion. It is eating the flesh and drinking the blood, not merely just eating crackers and grape juice, but in receiving the constant, ever-flowing life of Jesus, which is intentional. That takes intention. To remain is an action. That's what Jesus is talking about. I'm remaining. It's an action verb. Stay in. And then my life will not wither. So what's happened to me in the last couple weeks is that imperfections in everything, whether I'm ugly and need pruning, everything is there. I've been pruned. I've been cleaned. But I'm want to be in that life. I want to return to that life and remain in it. It's not enough just to pray a prayer, but remain in the life of Christ. This is a very important thing for us to understand. Stop it, Trevor, you stupid animal. That it is not about knowledge we get from a book, even a good book. It's not about having the right philosophy. It's not about having the right worldview, all those things will come if we remain in Him. The central thing is to remain in Him, remain in the vine. He is the vine. I am the branch. I am not the central figure. Jesus Christ is. The trees of the Lord are full of sap.